everything's going to be recorded and everybody can watch these later and share this with the team and whatnot. For today, we're going to keep the chat open so you can reach out on the chat and talk to us over here. I really encourage you to ask questions on the chat or in the QA. Just because sometimes this is a good opportunity for us to talk to the community and have an open chat about the things that you guys are doing and the things situations you want me to show over here as well. It doesn't need necessarily to be related to the theme of today. So any opportunity or any situation you want me to represent on the simulation, please please reach out on the chat. Okay. So yeah, so we already 1 minute after the hour over here, so let's start. Welcome everyone to one more workshop in cmBuilder. And let me stop the music. That can be a little bit distracting. And today our theme is Indiana Jones, right? That's why I wear this hat. And there's a ball behind me, and we are seeing this guy over here on the screen. And we can start right away by going into the workshop agenda, right? So today I'm going to touch base again on the dynamic tree structure. That's something that we already talked about on the last webinar, but today I'm going to explore this a little bit more and show how this can be useful for you guys. And then we're going to talk about the excavation colors, the zone textures. This is a new feature that is added just to premium users only. And then we're going to dive into some tips and tricks like we usually do. And just letting you guys know that recording will be available, and you should always check our previous workshops if you haven't seen them. Okay, so QA and chat are open. Please talk to us and ask questions as we go. Okay, so let's start with our dynamic tree structure. This is something that we already showed on the last webinar, but it was on testing environment. And now we officially deploy that. And I want to discuss today how this is relevant for you when you're working with your site, right? So it is a deja vu. We already talked about this, but let's explore this a little bit deeper, right? So why is dynamic tree structure are so important? It's so important. Why this new feature is so important, right? So one is that you are able to create sequences faster because you can identify the parts grouped in several different ways. So this helps you select the parts that you want to assign to specific milestones a little bit faster, right? You also have a cleaner view of the items that you have on your scenario, so it's easy for you to identify where they are in the environment. So you can quickly identify the parts that are assigned to milestones as well, and you will be able to see the IFC classes exposed right away. So let's jump into cmBuilder and see how that works. So basically, the tree structure that we have in cmBuilder, it can be accessed by this little button over here on the corner. And when you click on that, you can see the list of all the elements that are on your site, right? So now this list is a little bit different than what it was before. Before we had two tabs where you could see site planning and imported models. We're combining those two tabs into the same list. And also the way that they're organized over here is a little bit different. They're not following the same hierarchy that we have over here in the bottom anymore. They are kind of like more exposed and easier for you to find the elements, right? So all the resources that before were in a list by the category, they are compiled each one inside the resource category, and like zones, 3D labels, and 3D lines were inside the project setup category, and they are now like over here, so they are easier for you to find, right? Because a lot of times you're going to be working with elements that are disconnected from your timeline. So for example, if I want to create a line that would define an animation for like something like moving, like this object over here, I can easily identify where those lines are by simply exposing this over here, right? So a lot of times people will create an animation and they want to be able to hide those lines and so on and so forth. So that's how you do it. And the imported models that you see over here, you will find like that the structure that shows up by default is just following the default structure that we had before. However, now we have three different ways of grouping these elements. So the first way is the first option over here. The first method is the same that we had before for imported models, and the difference is just the grouping outside of imported models. The second option that you have over here, IFC structure, will expose all the IFC classes that you have right away for you, right? So if I want to select just the columns on P3, I can click on this and it will highlight those columns for me on my 3D view. And then you can take all of these parts and assign them to a specific milestone by right clicking over here, going into edit model element, and then playing around with your timeline, right? So this is a very quick way for you to select parts that are correctly assigned on the RFC classes and just like play around with them and then define where they're supposed to go on your milestones, right? So in the future, one thing that we're gonna actually add, and I think that this is coming on this next quarter, is that you will be able to change those IFC attributes as well. So this is something that we know that a lot of times the models are created in a way that you cannot control. So for example, if I select slab over here, a lot of times this foundation pads will be assigned as slabs. Over here, this is an example like exactly like that. So if I temporarily show this and I click on this footing over here, if I double click, you can see that the IFC class assigned to this part is a slab, not a foundation part, right? So this is very, very common where you get models that the IFC classes are not correctly assigned. What we want to do in the future is to be able to reorganize that, and you will have like a better tree structure to work with, right? So we plan to have more features that will allow you to manage this properly, because we want you to have the tools to do this inside cmBuilder instead of having to pre-process your model too much. Okay. So all of that is going to be now exposed to you over here, the IFC classes. And the second method over here will only change what you see for the imported models. All the rest will be the same. And the third method, the start IFC structure, this will expose all the parts, but they will be grouped by their start date. So when you click on this, by default, it will expand, sorry, the tree structure that you have over here up to a certain level, but you can always click on expand over here and collapse everything, or expand all, or go into a specific levels of expansion, right? So this is an interesting way for you to manage how you visualize your tree structure. And over here, you can like expand one of these chevrons to see what are the parts that are assigned to those milestones. So for example, if I go into my bulk excavation stage 1 start, I have over here all of these parts that are showing in this grouping are the parts that are starting at this date. And when you select the date, it will highlight all the parts for you. So even though they are hidden because maybe they were removed before this milestone, you will be able to see them in here. So there are two highlights that you can see over here. So this one is in orange, and these ones are in blue. And the difference is that the blue highlighted parts are parts that are selected but visible. The orange ones are the ones that are selected but hidden on this milestone, right? So if I activate milestone number 4, you see that now they are all highlighted in blue because they are all assigned and visible at this milestone. Cool. So this is a super cool way for you to understand where your parts are assigned on your milestones and so on and so forth. So you can analyze your sequence and review it and do the changes that you want to do. Okay. So this one change as well about that is that now you don't have the IFC filter anymore that was removed, and the reason why is because you don't need it because they're all in, like all the filters in all the IFC classes are exposed in here. Okay, so let's go into the next item for today is the excavation colors. So cmBuilder now allows you to assign colors to excavation operations. So right now you can see over here that we have a couple of excavation operations. And if I open my excavation tool in the excavation plan, you're going to see all these cuts in here. And then when you double click on one of these, you have now this selection of colors over here on the top. So these colors are interesting because you can put in a color for the bottom of your cut and also color for the sides. So if you want, for example, if you wanted to save some time when you're creating your bulk excavations like this one, let's hide this part over here. And let's say that you want to just like visualize that there is a shotcrete wall applied to this wall. So you can just come in here, click on select color to the sides and put in like a gray color. So this will look like there's a shotcrete wall going on over there. You cannot see that same color applied to the part over here in the top because this part over here in the top is handled by the cut that happened previously. Okay. So this is a great tool for you to save some time on creating the shoring kind of like identification, but also to highlight specific things on your excavation. For example, you can do different colors per stage, right? So you can assign staging and have the colors for that. You can identify different operations, like for example, what is a fill, where is a cut, and so on and so forth. You can use the coloring to identify different depths, right? So if you have like, for example, in a situation like this, where I have a detailed excavation and I want to show that this part over here is lower or higher than the other ones, the colors might be like a very easy way for you to do that. We have having to put like tags and labels and whatnot. Of course, you're going to need to create a legend for that, but the idea is that you can at least like highlight those very, very quickly. Okay. Also, a very interesting use of the colors is the backfill to grade, right? So on the previous workshop, we talked about having the excavations that were done using the grading as a reference, right? So when I do a cut over here, for example, and I want to represent this cut. And then let's say that in a milestone in the future, I'm going to bring this cut back to the original grading. So I can create a fill. And then the fill doesn't necessarily need to be like the exact same size, but you can like create a big fill, or you can come into your excavation plan, and then that cut that I just created over here, you can come in here and create a fill from a cut, and then that fill you can put in on the milestone that you prefer. So you can drag this and put it like in another milestone. And then the difference is that now this fill in here, I can do the fill to terrain. So it will be bring back my cut to the original terrain. But also I can click on this and make that fill look like the map. So this will kind of like apply the same texture that is in the map to that fill. So whenever you do a backfill, you won't need to like manage the colors like in with workarounds. You can do directly from the excavation tool just by assigning the satellite image and whatever is projected to that onto the fill. Cool. So a lot of people ask me the question like, hey, I want to remove my excavation at some point, right? I created an excavation, I created cuts, and in a further milestone, I want to remove that excavation. So in cmBuilder, it's not like that. You don't remove the excavation because the excavation by itself, it's a very kind of like simpler tool where you're doing the actions of removing parts on your terrain. So you have to think about the excavation as you were thinking about the excavation in real life. You're doing actions to your terrain. And if you want to remove or if you want to get back to the grading, you actually have to backfill it. So that's good. What you're going to do in real life, and you're going to do that in cmBuilder as well. So that's your remove excavation staging, right? Okay. So yeah, so if you have any questions about this process and you want me to repeat any of the actions that I did over here, please put them into the chat. Cool. So yeah, so excavation will now have these colors and you can use them very, very quickly. Now let's go to the next step, which is the zone textures. So zone textures is something that we just recently deployed, and we can see those zone textures over here in my last milestone. Basically, the idea is that now, whenever you're placing a zone into cmBuilder, you have the ability to use a texture library over here on the bottom, right? So this texture library will only be available for premium users and up, right? So premium enterprise. So if you're interested in like using this, let us know and we can like talk about an upgrade. But the idea is that you will be able to create zones that have like a better look, and then you can create something like this. All of these parts that you've seen over here, the grass, the concrete, the asphalt, the lines, all of those are created inside cmBuilder. They're not imported by from any other like model, right? So you can create things like that, but you can also use those to not just like do to also do temporary roads, right? So a lot of people are working on green fields or brown fields, and you want to create a temporary road, and you want to identify that as a dirt road, so you can quickly create those roads by applying a texture to the zone. So I'm gonna do it over here quickly. Just a road in the middle of anywhere, and then we can just go around and finish this road. And by default, it's gonna come in with a color, but then you can apply over here a dirt road texture just to show that this is dirt or that this is asphalt or sand and whatnot, right? So we are also gonna give you more options of textures of here in the future. So if there is any options of textures that you want to see available in cmBuilder, please let us know. Put in a feature request that we can build that for you. Okay. Another great use of the textures is to show a demolishing kind of like layout for this area. So for example, let's say that this project over here, before you get to this point, like someone else already did a demolishing of this building when already cleared up the site, or it's something that's going to be in your scope and you can put that into a specific stage of your milestones of your sequencing. So you can use a zone to kind of like clear up this area by just drawing something in here. And then once you're done, you can just put in a texture of dirt, for example, to show that um, there's nothing in there. That's like, this is just like a clear space for you to start uh, your construction. Cool. So now like all of that is going to show with a little bit more realistic graphics. Okay. So I think that like we also have a plan that in future we'll be able to apply textures to the excavation steps as well. So the first step is to apply colors, and then we can later on add textures as an option for those as well. Cool. So yeah, textures for temporary roads, for landscaping, like the one that you see over here in the question on the picture, and for finished roads as well in the demolition stage, right? So I created this little scene over here in the end just to show that you can add more elements into cmBuild from our library, and compiling elements from our library to create these scenes. A lot of times this is not going to come in with your models, and you want to like impress your customer, you're going to impress whoever it like if it's a client, you're going to create a marketing piece and so on. So you can find these elements in our library, especially under site conditions and safety personnel or building elements. There are a lot of things in here that you can look for. So for example, these benches, they are inside additional resources. These are like the miscellaneous resources that people ask for, and we don't have like a specific category to put them in. So you can explore a little bit about that in here. But also public roadways. This will give you like a better understanding about creating things related to your streets and so on and so forth. Um, Over here we have like vegetation to create these, to put the trees, people, so you can create these kind of like scenery of like people standing and so on and so forth. Public vehicles, generic vehicles will give you like some vehicles to play around, and building elements is where you want to create like some things related more to your scope of work, your building construction. Cool. So explore this a little bit because there are a lot of nice things in here that you can check and use it to create like scenes like this. Okay, so now let's jump into tips and tricks, right? So the first one that I want to talk about today is also related to zones and roads because some people asked us to create a road building tool. Right now, we don't have yet a road building tool, but there's a lot that you can do with the zones. And before, you had to create a zone like this to create a road, and you had to draw your zone and then draw it back parallel to that and then keep on going and do something like this, right? So you had to create several points and do the zone, and they wouldn't look very parallel, the lines and whatnot. So one thing that we created recently is the ability to put in a to do an offset of your sketch and keep the original line. So if I do the same thing over here, I'm gonna do one line first. So let's build up this line in here and bring my vehicles up to this point. And then I'm gonna create just one side of my road. And now I'm gonna go in here in offset this guy over here. And this is the new option, right? Keep original line. So if you deactivate this and you click on your line and you bring it in, this will create this kind of like view where like once you confirm it, that line is gonna, oh, sorry, let me just do this again, redraw it. Okay. So the previous option of the offset was that if you click on your line and you bring this in, the previous line was deleted, right? So the idea now of the offset is that you can keep the original line, so it will give you the ability to create like a parallel shape. So if I do a offset and keep the original line, I can select the sketch, and when I do this, now my original line is in there. So let me change this to this view that's going to be easier to visualize. Sorry, I should have done that before. And now we have two lines that are parallel to each other. And the only thing that you need to do is to close the ends of that uh, zone. So when you do that and you close and you make a closed polygon, this is what you get done for you. Okay, so it's very easy way to create your zones and so on and so forth, or your roads, sorry, because it gives you that ability of like saves and clicks. Okay, let me delete that and let's go into the next tips and tricks. So the next one is crane coverages, right? So this is just a creative way of showing crane coverage in several different methods using a couple of different tools in cmBuilder. So again, I'm gonna keep the the background as the street because it's easier to visualize that. But if I go into my milestone manager and I open over here my crane coverage, I already created something like this. And this is a very interesting way of using your zones and lines to highlight specific things and related to your crane. So you can use lines like I did over here on the top. You can use zones and you can also use massing if you want to create like the whole shape of the envelope, right? We know that in cmBuilder, you already have a resource coverage envelope over here under settings. And this is a resource coverage that is created automatically. And for some cranes, this is going to be following the hook for other cranes, it will be following the tip of your crane. Depends on the usage. But if you wanted to do something that's more customized, like this one over here, to identify, for example, the parts of your crane swing that are allowed in green, the ones that you can hover in with like a live load, but you have to like alert people or have specific measurements for safety, and the parts that you cannot hover a live load or string in any situation, right? So this is a very interesting way of showing that, and you could also use your 3D labels to highlight and like identify each one of these parts and assign them to one specific milestone if you want to see that only once, just to identify those kind of like aspects of your crane. Cool. So basically what I did over here, I can redo it again on the previous milestone. The idea is that you're going to use either the 3D lines or the zones, and I'm going to use zones over here just because it's a little bit simpler. So everything will be tied into the center of your crane, and then you can create a circle, right? Where you can click on the center of your crane and then bring that into whatever is the length, that the radius that you want to show over here. When you hit confirm, that's going to be created, right? So this, you can from here start adding some lines that would highlight those specific parts. So if I add a line in here and put into the center of my crane, and then add another line in here, I can have like that same visual. And now it's just like a matter of like playing around with your sketch to make sure that it will show exactly what you want. Some of you might have some difficulty to kind of like play around with the arcs, and the arc is a tool that requires a line to start from and will always be tangent to a line. So if I click on an arc over here and I try to create a tangent to that, it might create something like this. So don't worry about that. Just go into edit sketch, and then every arc will have a center. So you can click on move and then bring this arc to the center of this arc to the center of your crane, and then you will be able to highlight that exactly what you want. Cool. So you can create the same idea but facing the other way, and it's super easy. You just copy a zone, and then you can paste that zone, place that zone exactly where it was supposed to be, and then you can add it to sketch, and then you can click on move, select the arc, delete it, and then you click on the other arc, and then you can create the same thing over here. So see how when I'm gonna create the arc on the other way, it's still taking me to like that previous path because um sorry, the orientation of the arc is defined by like if you're tangent to one side or the other. So you can create, instead of creating an arc over here, you can create a line just to invert where what is the orientation of that arc, and you can close this, and this line that I created over here just to make sure that it's perpendicular and facing the other way. After I'm done with the arc, I can click on the line, delete it, and then bring the point to this side. So now I have like my zone created on that other side, and I can change the color and say, hey, these are the hazardous area and these are the totally around allowed areas. Of course, you can customize this the way that you prefer for your logistics plan, but this is the way to do that. And these are projected on the ground, but you can also unproject them and then bring them up if you want to make these zones like show up on a 3D space like this. Okay, so keep in mind that everything that I'm doing with a zone can also be done with a 3D line in a massing. So let me project this guy back on to the ground, and also on the crane envelopes there is another interesting, one thing to notice about this is that you should always like see if like you want these visuals to be showing at all times on your timeline or just for specific milestones, and the way to manage them is just ending these parts at a specific milestone, so when you go to the next stage they won't show up. Okay, so another way of visualizing crane envelopes is by assigning also like what is the load capacity to it. So these are manual creations that I did over here. Basically, I did like exactly the same thing, but using a 3D line. You go into 2D and you start with a circle, and then you create a circle just to define like what is the radius, and then you click on move over here, click on the radius, and then put in the radius that you're going to find on your spec sheet, right? So let me close this one. For this screen, in any other object in cmBuilder, you can open the side menu for that, click on specs, and then you can preview what is the load capacity and the specification for that object, right? So for this crane specifically, we can find the load capacity over here, and you can open this in another tab, right? Like I have it over here, and you can have these side by side, so you can visualize what are the values that you want to highlight. In this case over here, I put in a crane of 40 meters, and then I used the 40 meters, and then the 34, then the 28, and then 20. And I created like all of these steps over here. And basically, to do that, you can click on the arc, on the circle that you're creating, go into Edit Sketch, click on Settings, turn on the length, so you can see what is the radius of that crane, of that circle. Click on move, and then you click on this guy over here, and then you can type in the actual radius, right? So I can change this to whatever I want. And now I have a line that represents that load capacity. So lines, by default, they are created projected on the terrain. So if you want to move them up, you can unproject them on the terrain, and then you have them in here. And if you want to create several of these lines, just make sure that when you click, when you move them up, that you know what is the Z value over here. So you can copy the Z value to apply to the other lines. So they will all be on the same elevation. And after that, what I did was just to do the same thing, but with labels to show the load capacities in there. So this is a great way for you to visualize and see what are the parts on your model that will be inside specific load capacity ranges. Okay, so this is something that we plan to have done inside the platform automatically in the future. But for now, you can identify those load capacities manually inside cmBuilder. Cool. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So the next tips and tricks that I want to show is the location marker. So location marker is a resource that we created to help people identify the geolocation of specific points on your view, or simply bring the attention of points of interest, right? So some people want to use cmBuilder to locate, for example, where your cranes are supposed to be, where your fences are supposed to be, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that you're going to put a location marker like this one that we're going to see over here in the beginning of the milestone. And when I go to the 3D, you can find that location marking here. So let me put that again from scratch. So if I go into my resources and play in equipment, I can simply search for marker over here, and then I'm going to have a location marker. So this is an object that looks like a cross, and we created it in a way that these sides, these blue surfaces, they don't have any thickness. So you can take this and snap this face to this face, for example, and you can flip it like, and then you can do the same thing with the other side. So um, you can snap this face to this face, and now that marker is in exact like 90-degree shape according to those fences. And if you want to make it more visible, you can adjust the size of the marker by stretching this or making it go higher, and so on and so forth, right? So you can adapt this to your plan. And once you have those markers in, you will know what is the global location for that. So this global location over here, it's showing the distance between these location mark, exactly the middle point of it, to our global origin. So if you go into settings and click on origin axis, you're gonna see over here where is the global origin. The global origin is basically the center of the map, a little bit lower than the the terrain. But what's important over here is the X and Y values. So these X and Y values are basically the distance to this little center. And if you want to geolocate that marker somewhere, you can open your project, and then you can see what is the UTM reference of the center of our map. So you just make the difference, and you can find the UTM reference. You can calculate the difference to find the UTM reference of marker, right? Same thing with you. You can also check the latitude and longitude over here, but that's not usually what people use to look at things. So you can take the UTM coordinates from your project. Cool. Hopefully that was clear. The idea is just to give you like another tool to position things in real life. Okay, so this is something that your survey team is going to be using a lot if they want to use cmBuilder as a reference for locating these objects. Okay. The next thing is the project setup scenario. So a lot of times, like you are working with a project and you want to save some time because you want to create like different scenarios, and sometimes the project setup stage is what takes a little bit takes longer to come up with, right? So you placing your drawings, placing your model, placing the drone scan, or creating a custom terrain. All of those things are actions that you're going to do once for your project, but for every scenario, they are going to be repeated. Like you don't need to do them again if you create your scenario from scratch. So like you will have to do them again if you create your scenario from scratch, right? So my suggestion on this and my tip is that once you're done with your project setup stage, once you brought in all of these references and put them into place, you create a site that's going to be your project setup scenario. And this can be your starting point for everything. And I suggest that at this point, you can create all of that where you have all of the parts in the correct spot, like drawing in a model, for example. And then you can lock this scenario to prevent any changes applied to this, because nothing's going to change on this project setup um, as you move on. And then you can use this as your starting point. So duplicate this, and then from your duplication, that's where you're going to create your scenario number one, for example, right? Your planning. So this application will carry only the things that were applied in here, and then from here on you can start creating your stuff. And then after that, let's say that you want to restart your work, or for some reason, you can duplicate from this point onwards, right? So you always have that part of the work done for all the next scenarios that you're going to create. Cool. So this is just a way for you to kind of like create a backup plan, or to save some time whenever you're creating the scenarios all over again. Okay. So the next tips and tricks are the hidden milestones. So hidden milestones are basically just a placeholder milestone that you can create to store elements that you're not using at the moment. And I use this a lot, especially when I want to do some changes on the terrain, for example, that requires a cut, right? So the custom terrain tool that we have does not allow you yet, and this is coming soon, does not allow you yet to do a straight cut, a vertical cut. And let me just click on this so it won't like turn off again. Yes. Okay, cool. So it doesn't allow you to do a vertical cut. So sometimes you need to do some changes on your terrain. And if there is like a retaining wall or something like that, you want to do a vertical cut, you have to create a cut for it, right? So let's say that this would be the situation over here. So I would go and create a custom terrain for this, and I'm going to put in some points. And these points will have an elevation, and I'm gonna do something very, very quick over here. And let's say that this is the elevation of this parking lot, for example. So I'm gonna put in some points to define that elevation of the parking lot. And when I generate a preview, I'm gonna have this situation created over here. But let's say that this actually is a retaining wall. So I cannot create a vertical relationship on this terrain right now. But what I can do is I can apply this, and I can come in here into my cut and excavation, and I can do a cut that would represent that drop, the vertical drop, right? So if I do a cut like this, and that I don't want this cut to be like this deep, so I'm gonna go ahead and like select the bottom elevation to be the same as this part, and I'm gonna go ahead and make this look like the terrain, or like whatever is projecting in there. And basically, oh, actually this made a I think I used like a wrong example over here, but I can adapt this to that. And I'm going to actually edit the sketch and bring this a little bit further. Okay. So when I hit done and I have my custom terrain done over there, let me go back. Oh, so something's, I think I created a geometry that is, it's quite complex to resolve over here. But basically, the idea is that you can create that cut, and instead of having that cut as part of your simulation or things like that, you can go ahead and put that cut inside a placeholder milestone in the beginning. So you would do adjustments to your site without having to put that on your proper sequence. And the plan is that once you're done with that, you can go into your presentation and markup, and then you can remove that milestone from your presentation. So whoever opens this and will be able to whoever opens the simulation won't see that cut or like that representation that you just created. Okay, so let me see if I can redraw this shape, and I can create like a big rectangle over here if that's gonna fix that part. So let me hit done. Okay, there you go. Anyways, so this is a good way for you to have like locations to store adjustments or like parts that you're not using at the moment or things like that. Sometimes I even like put a lot of these parts over here to a placeholder milestone in the end so I can deal with them later and remove them from my view at the moment. So there are a lot of things that you can do that, right? So if you were creating, for example, a massing that is a template for a sketch that you're going to keep projecting that massing down to create sketches and things like that, something that I already showed in a previous workshop, you can store that massing into one of these placeholder milestones so they won't show up on your simulation. Oh, awesome. And the last tips and tricks that I want to show you today is actually something that's not related to cmBuilder. It's a new tool that it was created for Blender. Blender is something that I keep always talking about because it's a very interesting tool to create and manipulate your models before you bring them into cmBuilder. But now there was a change on Google Maps kind of like API and the way that they handle their data. They are allowing people to use their data a little bit more freely. So there is this new add-on to Blender that's called BLOSM. I don't know how to pronounce that, but this is the new add-on, BLOSM, right? So it's Blender OpenStreetMaps basically. And now this add-on has a connection with the Google Maps as well. So what does that mean? If you install this add-on to your Blender and you use it properly, there's some setup that you have to do, and I will send this link over here on the chat so anyone can look at it and like explore a bit on your own. But there's some setup that you're gonna have to do and create a Google account with an API, and you're just gonna do some steps first. But the idea is that with that done, you can create something like this in Blender very, very quickly, right? So this is just like a piece of my hometown, and then you can export these elements from Google Maps very, very quickly. So I'm gonna show how to do that quickly over here. So basically, when you install that, you can put in over here, it's going to show up this little thing, BLOSM, and then you can select the shape that you want to export, right? So let's take somewhere else over here. Maybe um, I'm not gonna use like a very, very like dense area because that might take some time to create. So I don't know, maybe John F. Kennedy Airport. So and this opens this view, so you can click on selection to select the triangle, and then from here you can close in the area that you want to locate. So of course, like the bigger the map, that's still gonna take longer for you to do so. So let me select just like a small area of this part over here, and for example this side, and we can define this area. The area itself that will be exported is going to be bigger than this because that's just basically how Google will handle their data. And then you're going to copy this in, and then you're going to come in back in here. You're going to paste that. We're going to change this to Google 3D tiles, and we're going to define what is the level of details. So for cmBuilder, building with details is already good enough, but if you want something that's more accurate, you can use building with more details. I'm going to use building with details over here just to be a little bit quicker. And then you click on import, and this is going to take a couple seconds or minutes. It depends really on the area that you're exporting, if it's like a too big of an area or if it's too complex. But right now it just took me a couple of seconds to do this, and this will export that area to me very, very quickly, right? So then from here, it's just a matter of like taking this and exporting it to cmBuilder, right? So it's a very easy way to do this. And also you don't need to scale anything. So some people were doing other process that you had to scale the model once you brought it into Blender and so on and so forth, but you don't need to do that. Now you can simply export this into cmBuilder or pre-process this to isolate your terrain, isolate buildings, remove parts of it. That's a whole other kind of like process that we can talk about. And one thing that I want to make sure that everyone knows is that if you need help with anything related to this process, setting it up or like adjusting your map tiles in Blender and things like that, just get in contact with us and we will be happy to help you, even though it's not a cmBuilder kind of like thing. We know that this impacts what you're going to do with cmBuilder, so that's why we want to help you with that the most that we can. Okay. So I think that this is it, right? So this will increase the graphics and also the context of your area by a lot. So I really suggest that you use this if you want to create something that is visually more impressive. It's almost like a drone scan, but it's actually taking the Google map tile as a reference. Okay. So let me see what is next on our thing. Oh no, we're done. So I'm just gonna open up the for questions or in the chat or in the QA. Any if you guys have any things that you want me to show in cmBuilder, even that's not like related to this scope of work over here, that's totally fine. This was a short one, only 15 minutes. We still have like 10 minutes to spare, but just want to make sure that you guys know that you can ask more questions if you need. Okay, so we'll raise up the music, and if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll stay here for like a couple minutes more. Okay, I think that we don't have any questions, so I think that we can wrap it up over here. And it was a pleasure. Oh, there you go, a new question. So the blossom adding feature, is it still viewed as a 2D image in Builder, or is there a level of height incorporated as well? It definitely has a level of height. So let me show you a side plan of how that looks in Builder. I forgot to do that. Sorry about that. So where is it? It's on model tests. So let me open this on the second screen over here, and I'll bring this to the view in a second. So laws and tasks. Okay. Okay. Where are my maps? Part mesh. These things. So let me refresh this view. So anything related to textures might take some time to load. So a suggestion for whenever you want to see things related to textures is to open cmBuilder and keep it minimized. And the reason why is because the browsers, they will take whenever you bring in the textured model into to a browser, it has to do two things at once. One is load the part, and two is to render that part. So if you keep the browser minimized, and this is not cmBuilder, this is like anything related to 3D view, it's better for you to keep them minimized because it's just loading and not rendering. So it will load faster. Okay. So for now, if I open this, you can see exactly how it looks like once you bring in a 3D model into cmBuilder from that Google Maps. the Blender export. See? Does that answer your question, Matt? Okay, scale models imported into cmBuilder. So scaling cmBuilder limited to FBX models, and the reason why is because IFC models, they already come in and they already carry the attributes to have the correct scale anywhere, but FBX models, you can scale them depending on how they were exported. So let me try to find an FBX model in here. Let's see if I do have something on my, yeah. So if I bring in like an FBX model in cmBuilder compared to an IFC model, you will have another option that is going to be the scaling, but it's limited to known scales, like converting from millimeters to centimeters or meters to feet and things like that. So if I open this guy, and then I go into here, this is an FBX model. And if I edit this, I'll have the scale model units option for me over here. And then I can change the scale of that model based on predefined units, right? Whereas if I do try to do the same thing with an IFC, there won't be any options for IFC scaling in here, right? So it would be great to understand why you need that, just so we can understand like what is happening that your models are not coming in with the correct scale. But FBX models, you can scale. IFC and step files, you can't. Cool. Okay, cool. Yes, so there are no other questions. Of course, if you do have any questions related to what we discussed over here, please reach out to our support team. You can go into the chat over here. You can book a support session. You can watch this presentation again on our YouTube channel or in our website. So please reach out if you have any questions. And I think we can wrap it up over here. Okay, see you guys.